Now, Oxford and Cambridge have long been seen as two of the most elite institutions in Britain, filled with the best and brightest students, often coming from private schools. But the Vice-Chancellor of Cambridge has warned private schools they will lose out on places to state school pupils to boost diversity. Only 7% of the population are privately educated, but they hold nearly a quarter of Oxbridge places. Cambridge might even look at free school meal eligibility to shake up its intake. So, should Oxbridge discriminate against private school pupils? What do you think, Vanessa?
Well, this is a tough one, isn't it? Because if you're a kid and you're at private school, that's not your fault. If you're very, very bright, that's not your fault. If you do incredibly well in your examinations, that's not your fault. And it doesn't seem fair to have the Chancellor of Cambridge University say, we will choose a state school pupil rather than you, and we will therefore exclude you from something that you kind of, deserve and merit the place at one of our colleges. On the other hand, it's certainly the case that there are certain private schools with not a fast track to Cambridge, but with lots of knowledge about how to get into Oxbridge. Lots of the teachers have been there themselves, lots of the parents have been there themselves. There's a kind of expectation of familiarity, a kind of ease and confidence about taking on an Oxbridge entrance exam that you might not have in a state school. So it's quite right to say that some private school pupils have an advantage because of that. But on the other hand, to exclude them just because they're a private school also doesn't seem fair. But I know that my own daughter was at private school, and my God, it was an absolute struggle to pay the fees, which seemed astronomical even back then. And I was aware that by sending her to private school, I may be doing her a disservice because she might not get into Oxford or Cambridge because of the predisposition towards choosing pupils from state schools. And that was way back then. She's 36 now, so some time ago. I also remember when I was at Cambridge myself, and I was the first person in my family to go to Oxbridge. My dad was in the underwear business. My grandma was selling underwear in Petticoat Lane Market. I certainly didn't come from a privileged, aristocratic Oxbridge background at all. So I was forging my own path when I went there. But I remember how delighted everyone seemed to be with the comprehensive school pupils who were there when I was there. Because, they'd come such a long way to get there. They seemed to be so distinguished and so interesting and individual and had a whole different perspective on everything. So I think Oxbridge have always wanted state school pupils, and now they're falling over backwards to do their best to get them. But what a damn shame if you've been saving up to pay school fees for your kids and your kid gets pipped at the post and should jolly well get the place.
It's interesting, isn't it, Isabel, that they're now saying that they might actually, instead of comparing the intake between state school and private school pupils, they might then judge it on who's having free school meal eligibility. Do you think that will affect the intake?
This is such an interesting issue, isn't it? And it really resonates with me because I work every hour God sends to be able to pay just about to put my children, 3 of them, through private schools. Now, they started off in the state system. Unfortunately, where we live, the local school was in special measures, despite the fact I live in one of the most affluent parts of the country. So I took that decision because they were not getting a good enough education, in my view, locally. And I do have these dark nights of the soul, wondering whether actually, at the end of this golden road, they're going to be discriminated against because they've been to these elite schools. And actually, what I'm paying for is not to try to fast-track them into Oxford and Cambridge. I think they should get there or not on their own merit. It's rather something else I'm paying for the confidence that you get from the best education, for the aspiration, for all the extracurricular stuff. And I think that there's a bit of a misconception amongst some people about the kind of fast-tracking of people from the private system. I mean, my grandfather, as it happens, was Vice-Chancellor of Oxford University. He's got a library named after him at an Oxford college. I applied. I wasn't good enough. I got rejected.
Wow.
I had been to some of the best schools, did very well in my A-levels. I wasn't good enough. And that is actually absolutely how it should be. I never thought I ought to get in because my grandfather had run the place. It should be on merit. It's not a social engineering place.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Ian, what do you think to all of this?
I think everything Vanessa said, everything Isabel's just said, all of that makes sense. The one area I worry about, in a world where any kind of discrimination is akin to second-degree murder, the one group that is still left where it's kind of OK to discriminate are sort of posh people, rich people, and those that have got a few quid, then that seems to be absolutely fine. And it kind of concerns me, in the same way that we want more working-class people in politics, for example. We also don't want to preclude include people who happen to go to Eton. You've got the right to pursue that career if you want to. And I would hate to see really bright, gifted kids who are somehow knocked back because of a quota system.
It's interesting what Isabel was saying as well, because actually there could be parents out there who send their children to state school who could be so well off that they're also paying for
100%.
private
There's
tuition.
Loads of them.
Yes.
I know loads of them of my peer group, and they are making up for what they see they don't get in the state sector by chucking a load of money at private tuition.
Which is why maybe this free school meals eligibility check might make more of a difference. What do you reckon, JJ?
I think it shouldn't be down to Stormzy to have to diversify the applicants who are going to these to Oxford and Cambridge. And if these smart kids are being prejudiced against, then they're not allowed to go there. Try Durham. There's other top universities. Oxford and Cambridge they're great universities, but they're not the only places they can go to.
True.